With the launch of Season of the Deep, we got a large load of content. Some of that content being one new Strand aspect for each class that allows us to make different types of builds that we couldn't before. With this video, I will dive into the Strand Titan aspect called the Flechette Storm and bring 2 builds to the table with this aspect. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my other builds on my channel that I've recently created, especially my recent video on the Strand Warlock and its new aspect. Also, thank you for the amazing support lately, you guys are amazing, and alright, let's get into the first build. So before we get into the first build, let's go over the artifact mods since these artifact mods will be the same for both these builds. The ones you really want to use for this build, especially if you're using an arc weapon, you want to use Shock and Awe, just to get more jolt when you're playing. Also with Strand Soldier, your Strand weapons gain unraveling rounds whenever you gain Woven Mail. This is not every time because you need to wait for your Woven Mail to go all the way down to 0 before it procs again, but it's still really nice to have, especially if you're trying to go for that. Improved Unraveling, increases the amount of damage dealt by unraveling a target. This helps both our builds with our melee, especially because we're going to be using a lot of unraveling with the melee. And you can use any enchant mods you really like. Whatever mods you are using for the build, the only one I recommend the most is the authorized mods melee, and also you could probably do Technicolor Siphon as well. But I just have authorized mods melee and then authorized mods arc. For this first build, the exotic we're using is the Syntheseps. What this exotic does is Biotic Enhancements is the exotic trait, increase melee lunge range, improve melee and super damage when you're surrounded. We're going to be taking advantage of this because we're going to be using our melee a lot in this build, so we're going to be doing more damage with our melee. For the subclass, we're on the Strand Titan Berserker. We only have one super, it's the Blade Fury, so we're just going to go with that. For the Barricade, we're going to be using the Tower Barricade. You can use the Rally Barricade, but since we're not really using the Drinker's Lash aspect, we're going to be just using the Tower Barricade. Jump is completely up to you. I'm just using Catapult Lift. For the melee, we're using Frenzied Melee. This is the only melee we have, but this gives us 3 charges, and when you do the normal melee, it will sever targets, but we'll get into this very soon with the aspect. For the grenade, we're using the Shackle Grenade. Basically what this does is when you throw it at the ground, it will split into 3. Whatever gets caught in those 3 shackles will get suspended, and also this stuns unstoppable champions. The reason we're using this is because suspension is just really nice in general for Strand. You can use the other 2 grenades if you really want to, but I just like the Shackle Grenade since the suspension is very nice to have, and it just helps with crowd control in general. For the aspects we're using Into the Fray, what this does is destroying a tangle or casting your super grants Woven Mail for your nearby allies. When you have Woven Mail, your melee regeneration rate is increased. The reason we're using this is for the constant Woven Mail you can get from tangles and the regeneration rate for your melee. And our other aspect is the new one, it's the Flechette Storm. It's basically like the Consecration melee on Solar Titan. Basically what this does is when you're sliding, you activate your charged melee to leap into the air and knock back nearby targets away and doing damage to them. While you're airborne, you'd use your charged melee again, you rapidly push your charged melee, and you will throw these unraveling projectiles which will seek out targets and doing a crap load of damage, especially with our Syntheseps. This to me is probably my favorite aspect out of the 3 that came with Season of the Deep, for how much damage it does, especially with Syntheseps, and just how fun it is to use. For the fragments of this build, we're going to be using Thread of Fury. Damaging targets with a tangle grants melee energy. We're going to be taking advantage of this because we're going to be making a lot of tangles, especially with unraveling from our melee. And once we either shoot it or throw it, you'll get melee energy if it hits a target. And this will also help because once you destroy those tangles, it will release a pulsing Woven Mail, which then gives you more melee energy from our aspect. For our second fragment, we're using the Thread of Continuity. Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects applied to targets have increased duration. We're just using this for the plus 10 to strength, and also just the Unravels to make it longer, and also the Suspend for our grenade. For our third fragment, we're using the Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy. This is just so we get a grenade more, and so we can suspend more targets. Then for our final fragment, we're using the Thread of Warding. Picking up an Orb of Power grants Woven Mail. So every time we pick up an Orb of Power, it will refresh our Woven Mail timer, and also this will increase our melee generation from our aspect. So for the mods, let's go into the helmet. So our helmet is really simplistic for the mods. We're just going to be using Arc Siphon and Harmonic Siphon just for the Strand and the Arc Weapon Final Blows to give us Orbs of Power, which will feed into our melee and our Woven Mail and our subclass in general. For the third mod on our helmet, we're using Hands On, so we gain bonus to super energy on melee kills. We're going to be getting a lot of melee kills with this build, so we're going to get a lot of super energy from this build as well. For the golems, we're using Grenade Kickstart. When your grenade is fully expended, you will gain grenade energy depending on how many armor charges you have. And with this build, we're going to be getting up to 4 armor charges, so if we have the armor charges for that, it will give us a lot of grenade energy back. And also when you have 0 armor charges, it will also give you a little bump no matter what. For our second mod, we're using Heavy Handed, so your powered melee final blows create orbs of power. we're going to be getting a lot of melee final blows with this build, so we're going to be making even more orbs with our melees. For third mob, we're using momentum transfer. Causing damage with a grenade reduces your melee cooldown, so every time we get our shackle grenade, which will be very often, you can throw at enemies and it will give us 20% of our melee back. For the chest piece, we only have 2 mods here. We're using charged ups. This is how we get up to 4 stacks armor charge. You originally have 3 without this mod. Then we have concussive dampener. You can really choose whatever resist you want. I just like this one in general. For the bullets, for the first mod, we're going to be using elemental charge, collecting a fire spray, ionic trace, stasis shard, or void breach, or destroying a tangle. It has an escalating chance to give you armor charge. This does not work if you throw the tangle, but it will work if you shoot the tangle. And it says escalating chance because it's not every time. It's like every other tangle, I believe. But once we do that, we'll get 1 armor charge for our grenade kickstart. For our second mod, we're using invigoration. Reduces melee cooldown each time you pick up an orb of power. This will just feed back into our melee. We're using recuperation as the last mod on our boots. Replenishes health each time you pick up an orb of power. Since there's not a lot of healing for Strand, I know there's woven mail, which gives us 60% damage reduction. This just gives you more health, just to balance out the non-healing factor that Strand does not have. So for the class ability, for the first mod, we're using Bomber. Reduces grenade cooldown when you're using your class ability. So every time we pop our barricade, it will give us a small bump to our grenade energy. Along with Outreach, which does the exact same as Bomber, reduces your melee cooldown when using your class ability. So every time we pop our barricade, we're going to get a small bump to melee and grenade energy. For the third mod, we're using Reaper. After using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an orb of power. This is very nice in my opinion. This is just an automatic way to get an orb if you really need it. For this build, you want to build into resilience first, strength next, grenade next, and then recovery next. So for this build, what I have here is I have 100 resilience, 100 strength, 70 discipline, and 50 recovery. The reason we're doing this is because we want that 30% damage reduction always with our resilience and also for our class ability. And then we want as high a strength as possible so then we can get a lower cooldown for all 3 of our melee charges. And then for our grenade, I know we have the grenade kickstart, which will also build into this, but it's just nice to have as much discipline as you can to get a lot of suspensions in. And then obviously recovery, just to get your health back faster and so you can regen it faster. For the weapons of this build, right here is probably what I'm going to be running for high level content if I am bringing this into high level content, is Nagi's, Aikilos, or whatever SMG you really like using. And then circular logic with demo. With this build, you can really use any Strand weapon you really like with any special and any heavy. Some weapons I really like with this build are Rufus's Fury and Immortal as a primary. But if you're going for a secondary, you can even use the Iron Banner fusion rifle that just recently came out. You can also use the Strand weapons from this season as well. So in conclusion, for weapons, you can really use any Strand weapons you really want with any combination of weapons you really like to use and that you feel comfortable using. One exception is Rufus's Fury has Demolitionist, which I really love, and also Circular Logic has Demolitionist as well. You can definitely make a play with Hatchling, but I still think Demo is a better option. I know that Rufus can get Demo and Hatchling, but I just like the bonus damage with Frenzy and the reload speed, because all Strand and Stasis primaries in the top slot, they got a minus 10% damage reduction compared to Kinetics, which got a little buff. So basically Frenzy just kind of levels that out. So for the gameplay loop of this build, basically what you want to do is once you have 3 charges of melee or any charges of melee, you use those melees up, especially when you see on the left side of your screen you say Bionic Enhancements. That is your Synthesis proccing. That will help you do more damage with your melee. When you use those melees with the Flechette Storm, you will probably create a tangle from the unraveling. What you do with the tangle is you can either throw it at your feet or throw it at an enemy. Make sure to get into the dome, the pulsating dome that the tangle is making. This will give you a woven mail and also give you increased melee regeneration rate. Also pick up any orbs that you see on the ground, especially from the melee kills and weapon kills. And then use your grenade, shackle grenade to suspending targets. So if you need to suspend them and so you can then use your melee on them, you can do that. And also the grenade will give you melee energy when you throw it. Also, if you're almost there to a melee or almost there to a grenade, you can just pop your class ability, your barricade, and you will get both those back. And then just keep getting kills with your Strand weapons. Keep picking up the orbs. Keep shooting, either shooting or throwing the tangles. Shooting will give you the armor charges. Throwing will give you just melee energy in general, and woven mail to give you more melee energy. This whole build is melee focused, and I really like it because of how much damage the melee can do. And you're going to be getting your melee a lot with this build, so use it as much as you need to. Moving on to the second build. For the exotic for this build, we got Abandoned Leap. Basically what this does, and the exotic trait of it, is Puppeteer's Control. Dringer's Lash spawns 2 additional projectiles, so it already spawns 1, so it's going to spawn 3 now. It tracks targets more aggressively and travels further. You gain Woven Mail when suspending targets, and this is from anything. This is from your grenade and the barricade. This exotic is going to be really good for the build in general and just keep everything in control, and will also keep you alive constantly with the Woven Mail. For subclass, we got Blade Fury again, since it's our only super. For the barricade, we're using the Rally Barricade. The reason we're using the Rally Barricade is because when you pop your class ability, it'll send those lashes out to suspend targets in its way. And then after that, you can just uncrouch or whatever you want to do, and then you can just shoot enemies behind the barricade. It's just very convenient in my opinion with this exotic, and also it gives you benefits like stability and range and reload speed when you're behind the barricade. For the lift, we're just using Catapult Lift. You can choose whatever one you want. For the melee, again, we only have 1 melee for this subclass. We're using the Frenzied Blade. So you can use this normally to sever targets if you're going against like a Tormentor or something like that, but also you can use the aspect, which we'll get into soon, to unravel targets as well. For the grenade, we're using Shackle Grenade. The reason we're using this is so we can get Woven Mail with it from our exotic, as well as the barricade, and just to have more crowd control on the battlefield, and also so you can stun unstoppable champions. For the aspects, we're using Flechette Storm. Again, this is the new aspect, so when you're sliding and activate your melee, you will leap up into the air, knocking everything away from you in front of you, and also doing damage with that. And then when you push your melee over and over again, it will send out these unraveling projectiles, which will track enemies, and you can use this when the enemies are suspended. So basically they're just stuck in a spot in place, and then you just keep throwing those projectiles at them. So with our barricade, this is the Dringer's Lash aspect. So this one only gives you 1 lash, but with our exotic it gives us 3. So that's why we're using this. This also stuns unstoppable champions. For the fragments of this build, we're using Thread of Mind. Defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. We're going to be suspending a lot of targets with this build, so whenever you get a kill on a suspended target, you will get class ability energy. For our second fragment, we're using Thread of Warding. Picking up an Orb of Power grants Woven Mail. This also just gives us that 60% damage reduction, and just gives us another way to get Woven Mail so we stay alive for longer. For our third fragment, we're using Thread of Generation. Dealing damage generates grenade energy. This will just help us get our Shackle Grenade faster, so we can do the loop of barricade, grenade, etc. For the fourth fragment, we're using Thread of Fury. Damaging targets with the tangle grants melee energy. So whenever you shoot a tangle with targets nearby it, or if you throw a tangle, it will give you melee energy. For the mods, let's start with the helmet. For the helmet, we have Dynamo. With this build, we're going to be popping our class ability a lot on near targets, so this will just give us some extra super regeneration. Next, we got just Heavy Ammo Finder just from our heavy ammo. Then we have Harmonic Siphon. Rapid Strand Final Blows create Orbs of Power. For the gauntlets, we have Heavy Handed. Your powered melee final blows create Orbs of Power. We're going to get a decent amount of powered melee kills with this build, so we're going to get a lot of orbs from this mod. Then we got Momentum Transfer. Causing damage with the grenade reduces your melee cooldown, so whenever we throw a grenade, it will give us some melee energy back. Then we have Grenade Kickstart. When you throw your grenade and it's fully expended, you will gain grenade energy depending on how many armor charges you have. With this build, we're going to have up to 4 armor charges. You should have 2 to 4 armor charges at all times. For the chest piece, we got Charge Up like we just said. This will give us another stack of armor charge, going from 3 to 4. And then for the resist mod, we just have Concussive Dampener. You can choose whatever resist you want. For the boots, we have Recuperation. Replenishes health each time you pick up an Orb of Power. So since there's not a lot of healing on Strand, this will just help us heal a little bit more. Then we got Invigoration. Reduces your melee cooldown whenever you pick up an Orb of Power. Since we're going to be using our melee a decent amount with this build, this will just help us get more melee energy whenever we pick up an orb. For our last mod, we got Stacks and Stacks. Picking up an Orb of Power gives you 1 additional stack of armor charge. So every time you pick up an orb, it will give us 2 stacks of armor charge instead of just 1. So we only need 2 orbs to get to max stacks of armor charge. For the class item, we got Outreach and Bomber. Outreach reduces your melee cooldown whenever you use your class ability, and Bomber reduces your grenade cooldown whenever using your class ability. These two will just play together, so whenever we pop our class ability, which will be a lot, it will give us a chunk of grenade energy and melee energy. And our last mod here is Reaper. After using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an Orb of Power. So this is just another way to get more orbs with this build. So for the stats of this build, what you want to build into is 100 resilience first, and then you want to go into discipline next, and then strength last. The reason we're doing that rotation is because for the resilience you get 30% damage reduction with 100 resilience. Then you want to build into your grenades and then you can get your shotgun grenade as fast as possible. And then lastly, build into your strength, so whenever you get your melee up, you can use the Flechette Storm to unravel targets around you. So here you can see on my stats, I have 100 resilience, 70 discipline, and 70 strength. With only 40 recovery, you could probably rate this up if you have good armor, and also you could probably try and get triple hundreds if you wanted to. But I just felt like this is a good balance between all three, so then I can use my grenade a lot, and with grenade kickstart I'm going to be getting it faster than my melee either way. So then whenever I get my melee up from all the sources that we have for getting our melee back, I can then use it and hopefully get a shorter cooldown with 70 strength. For the weapons of this build, you can really use whatever weapons you really want. I would recommend using a Strand weapon like the Circular Logic, like I said from the last build, with Demolitionist, or you can use Rufus's Fury with Demolitionist, or even Immortal. You can really use whatever weapons you really want for this build. But I like this combination I have on right now, just for higher level content, especially because you can infinitely suspend targets with your cross ability and your grenade. And the rotation between the barricade and the grenade is going to be a little bit slower with this build now, because they did reduce the amount of energy you get from a threat of generation in general for the season. So it will be harder to get your grenade back faster. But with the mods I have on for Grenade Kickstart and Stacks, I feel like you can still get your grenade back a little bit faster than normal. And also popping your class ability will also give you some grenade back as well. So that brings us to the gameplay loop. Basically what you want to do is you want to first suspend any targets that you see. You can either use your grenade first or your barricade first. I usually use my barricade first, just so whenever I gotta get a kill, then it will spawn an orb of power as well with a weapon kill. So once I use my barricade on a big group of enemies and suspend them all, and then use my melee to do an AoE attack on all the suspended people in front of me, and then unravel them. And from that, a tingle should spawn from one of the enemies that you use your melee on, and then from the unraveling, and then what you do with the tingle is you either shoot it if there's enemies around, or you throw at enemies, and it will give you some of your melee back. After that, you can use your shotgun grenade or your barricade back, because you probably have it back after all the kills that you got with suspended targets, and you keep picking up the orbs, feed your grenade kickstart, and just keep getting weapon kills to generate your grenade back faster. So really with this build, you just want to keep suspending targets and keep killing them to get your barricade back from threat of mind, and also keep damaging to get your grenade back with threat of generation, and also just keep that woven mail up from orbs and suspending targets in general. And then whenever you see suspended targets or just a big group of targets in general, you can use your melee to unravel all of them and even get kills with it. Make sure to pick up the orbs from the melee kills, and also after popping your barricade. And basically if you're going up against a champion or a tormentor, basically the rotation you want to do for suspending is you want to use your grenade first, get this suspended, do damage with your weapons to generate more grenade energy from that, and also use your melee on the target to get unraveling to do even more damage to get more grenade energy. Once they start coming down from the suspension, you want to use your class ability to suspend them again. This will give you woven mail again, and you just keep going. You keep shooting them with your weapons until you get your grenade back, and then once they come back down, you just throw your grenade back again, and they should be dead after a couple rotations. Don't spam your abilities, just make sure once they're coming down from suspension, you want to suspend them again. So those are the builds, guys. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, a like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Thank you again for the amazing support lately. You guys are awesome, and I can't wait to keep making videos for you guys. The Flechette Storm is probably my favorite aspect out of the three that we got for Hunter, Warlock, and Titan. I just feel like with certain builds, it can do a lot of damage, like with our first build. It also has good crowd control, because then you can suspend targets. Like with this build, you can suspend them and then use your melee on them when they can't move. For my next video, it'll be over the Hunter aspect, and I got a really good build for you guys, so make sure to stay tuned for that. If you guys like this kind of content and want to see more builds from me, make sure to go to my YouTube channel. I posted a lot of Titan videos so far, and we're just getting into Warlock. I did an Arc Warlock and a Strand Warlock so far. And I'm going to be doing more videos on Warlocks and then going into Hunters very soon. So yeah, thanks again for watching the video. Hope you guys have a great day.
AKZ, you crazy?